everyone, and welcome to Gravely Amusing, the only podcast that gets a lamp dance from the devil and the pale moonlight. I am your host, Brian Peters, the man child of macabre, and I'm here with my sometimes co-host, the Finch, BP and the Finch in the house.
Yo, what up? Coming to you from the West Coast.
What's coast? What's side? And collaborating with, of course, the always popular, award-winning podcast, the Krypton Report, Tyler,
Nice. Hey, I
and
go by
the
Ty
man,
Wing.
Tywing, and that the man that really needs no introduction, the man making probably 10 grand a day on OnlyFans, James. James, what hole is it in? Cole.
Nice for pulling our
Wow.
pre-recording joke up. It was good.
Yeah. Yeah. Nothing is
I'll
safe
tell you,
from
man.
Brian.
Hey, you got
Yeah.
bills to pay. You got bills to pay.
It's the only way to pay bills these days, man.
You guys pay your bills?
What?
You guys pay your bills? What?
Well, not me
Okay.
personally,
Sometimes.
but a guy I know, him and her. I don't know what's happening anymore. Sometimes when your mind is just all movie quotes, like sometimes you pull movie quotes that don't even make sense in the situation. But
You're like, I just like this quote. I want to use it.
It fits, you know?
no milk,
Absolutely.
no milk will ever be our milk.
Somebody's been on an Adam
I don't even know
Sandler
what I'm
kick.
doing anymore. But boys, it is our world famous yearly Batman Day episode. And now you horror fans might be wondering, why does Brian do a Batman episode every year? Well, Batman is rooted in horror and gothic tones. He is the world's greatest detective. He fights monsters, murderers, all the things of supernatural and horror. And he is my favorite superhero. And it's just the way it's going to be. So, last year's discussion was pretty darn good. I was pretty proud of our discussion last year. You know, we asked, should Batman kill? And if you have not heard that episode, that is our season 2. It's going to be one of the early episodes of that. But season 2, does Batman kill? And this year, to celebrate the 20th anniversary of Batman Begins, I wanted to ask a question that was related to Christopher Nolan. And I wanted to get into something that is oftenly debated amongst Batman fans. Some all have different opinions. I'm not sure what my opinion is yet on this. So that's the whole root of the discussion. But the question I want to ask you, Batman fans, and us in the room here, and Krypton Report, and with BP and the Finch, and the gravely amusing family of rotating guests, did Christopher Nolan ruin Batman? Or did he make Batman better? That's what I really, really want to think on today. Because, like, the Christopher Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy is widely praised as groundbreaking. It made a lot of money. Like, all 3 movies made over $1 billion together. But it also changed the character of Batman. It changed superhero movies. It changed even Hollywood itself and the tone of how they were going to do things. Was this change good? Was it bad? That is the discussion today. So we're not here to bash Nolan. We're not here to bash Zack Snyder, believe it or not. Which Zack Snyder's way of doing things probably was really, really influenced by how Nolan did things. But we want to look at both sides of this, if he ruined it or if he helped, and let's get into it. So, boys, if the world was ending, let's start with this question. If the
Okay.
world was ending and you had to put stuff into a time capsule, or not the world was ending, I'm sorry. If you were, whatever, if you had to put stuff in a time capsule and the world was going to go off, the world was ending and we're going to go off to another planet and we found another planet to live on and we're going to have to freeze all population and make a new colony or whatever scenario. I don't even know what I'm saying. The main point I'm trying to say is if you were to show future generations that have never heard of Batman, never seen Batman, have no knowledge of Batman, and you were to put one thing in like a time capsule, what would you put in there to show Batman? So I want to know one book you're going to give him, like one comic book you're going to give him, and I want to know one show you're going to give him and one movie.
I'll go first.
Tyler, you're rotating this clockwise. Go ahead.
Movie, Mask of the Phantasm. Show, Batman animated series. Book, that's the tough one. Volume 1 of Scott Snyder's Court of Owls.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Finch, just going clockwise.
All right. Movie. I'm gonna go with. I'm gonna do the box set of the Nolan films, even though that's what we're here to discuss.
Okay. 4K. Blu-ray.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Spare no expense.
TV show. I'm gonna go Justice League Unlimited. Well, the Justice League box set. It might be a little cheating, but I'm gonna go Justice League, even though the anime series is the way to go, honestly. And then comic, I'm gonna go Hush.
Oh. Hush 1 or Hush 2?
No, we don't talk
I
about
don't
Hush
think
2
I've
yet.
read Hush
Heart of
2.
Hush.
So I was gonna say I don't think I've read Hush 2, so Hush.
What about Heart of Hush?
I have not read that one either, I don't think.
Heart
I
of-
just read I read the main one. I don't know.
It's okay. I'm just busting your balls, buddy.
That's really the
But
only.
Heart of Hush, Hush steals Catwoman's heart and keeps her alive with all these machines.
Oh yeah, I don't know nothing about that one.
Yeah, that's a good one. I recommend it. James, what do you think?
Well, I'm torn on books. I'm torn between Nightfall and Batman Noel. They're both a couple of my favorites. So that's a tough one. I think Batman Noel has a little bit more culture in it with the adaptation of A Christmas Carol
Yeah.
with it. So I think that would be really fun. I mean, movie. I was thinking, the best Batman movie is probably Batman Begins. So I mean, that would be, even though outside of the aesthetics of like the costuming and stuff for Matt Reeves, I mean, the Batman is a fair choice to put in there. I think, all the time he spends as Batman in that movie in the costume that's one of my favorite parts. So, and then, I mean, if you go with the Batman, can put Batman 66 in there just to show like this is one version, and like they were kind of going 66 but in a serious way with this one. You can see just how he ranges as such a character.
So I am, for my movie, I am going to put in Batman 66, the movie. And shut up. Don't knock it. Let's scratch it. Let's scratch it. Okay. All right. Okay. No, but there's reasons. So I'm choosing Batman 66, the movie, over putting the show in there because Batman 66, the movie, gives you the best versions of those villains, and you get a nice mixture of the best villains in there. But you get that style of Batman 66. You get the over campy stuff. You get the great, Batcave, and you get all the vehicles in there. You get the greatness of what that show was. For the show, I'm gonna pop in there. I'm putting in Batman the Animated Series because versions of characters in that show are not shown in Mask of the Phantasm. So even though Mask of the Phantasm is the best Batman film, in my opinion, having the whole entire show of Batman the Animated Series, you get to see Mr. Freeze, Clayface, the Ventriloquist, Poison Ivy. You get to see so many different villains that I would want the future to see. And you get was arguably the definitive version of Batman. And for book wise, I was really feeling Nightfall Saga. I really do like the Knifefall saga, but I'm gonna mix it up, and I'm gonna put in the No Man's Land saga. Um,
Okay.
I like I like the Scarecrow story in that. I like the villains kind of fighting for territory. You still get to see kind of all Batman's villains in there, and you get like a really emotional arc with Batman and Commissioner Gordon, where there's kind of this talk of like that Gordon knows who he was the whole time, but just won't won't face him. Like there's an emotional scene where Batman takes his mask off, like ready to tell him everything, and Gordon's like, "No, I don't wanna see it. I don't wanna know." But Gordon feels that Batman forgot about him, that he's forgotten Gotham because he disappeared for a year. And you get this, like, really, really good story of Batman just trying to defeat an enemy that he wasn't prepared for, which was, natural disasters and stuff like that. Really, really good Batman story. So, I noticed that most of our answers added into more of, like, a fantastical idea of Batman with a little bit more villains, and not all of our answers were really the most realistic version of Batman. Like, Finch did say, the Nolan trilogy, but he wanted to make sure that he put Batman animated ways in there for, like, a more.
Well, Justice League, so you get him
Yeah.
interacting with other superheroes, which is what he does.
Yeah, and that's the way to go. And like, so if we look through Batman through the years, we talk about the Batman the serials, like when Batman first started out, he it was very it was very grounded because it had to be because of budget reasons and stuff. But Batman started out, and so did Superman for the Krypton report guys. Batman started out and Superman started out facing these more grounded mobster, you know, like dirty businessman type things. And then when we get into your Silver Age, things kind of get more fantastic, if you will. And even though Superman's first villain was Ultra Humanite, if I'm correct.
Yes.
You are.
Yeah, I have to be correct because it's me. Yeah, Ultra Humanite, but he wasn't full monkey scientist yet. But that's and then Batman's first fantastical, depending on how you want to, what version you want to go into, was, kind of the Monster Men and the kind of Hugo Strange making monsters type thing. Or if you want to even go in there like, Doctor, kind of like a Doctor Death type thing, where Batman kind of went that way. So, and then we get into Batman 66 and we get like Mr. Freeze stuff, and we get like False Face and a version of Clayface. And as we keep going into the Bronze Age, then we get Clayface and we get Poison Ivy stuff, and we get Batman facing all these types of different creatures. And nowadays we have him facing, like with Justice League Dark, and we get that versions of Batman in the comic where he's facing all these different things. And way superhero movies were before then, like name some superhero movies before we got Batman Begins. Like what
Excellent.
would you let's just go around the circle. Like
Blade.
what do you feel, starting with Tyler, what do you feel was kind of the tone of superhero movies before we got Batman Begins?
I think it was this balance. If we're looking where are we starting? Because
Let's start. Okay, so let's start and okay. So Batman 66, very campy, very Cody stuff. Then when we got into the 80s and we're getting to the Bronze Age, you know, we had we had Frank Miller make Batman so much darker, and we got Batman 89. And then as Batman 89 like changed Batman also for kind of permanently, when we get into Batman Returns, that tone is still fine. But then we get into Batman Forever, and we're kind of going back to this Batman 66 tone slowly. But when we get to Batman and Robin, we'll just start there. We get to Batman and Robin, and we get Mr. Freeze and Poison Ivy and Bane. Would you say that campiness is just not cutting it anymore in the late 90s?
Okay,
Like,
let's look at 97 period.
yeah, let's
Okay.
do it.
So you have Batman and Robin, you have Spawn, you have Steel,
I was
and then
hoping someone would say Spawn.
you have the Justice League TV pilot that didn't get picked up. And I would say 97 is really the death of an era for comic book films. I mean, okay, we also had Men in Black in 97, which is Malibu Comics. I feel like the 90s was about exploring comic books not from the big two as much. You know, the only of the big two we got, I mean, Steel did not perform well. And we got, the three Batman films in the 90s. I feel like we can't underestimate what the importance of Spawn and McFarlane was in the 90s, because I mean, how many Spawn toys did you see for kids?
Oh, they were
There
all over
was
the place.
so much Spawn.
So much.
Yeah.
And I feel
And
like
Spawn was kind of an elevation on film for superhero movies, as it were, just kind of the effects for something like that, you know? Everything they did before was kind of, I mean, yes, there was so many groundbreaking things, Superman in the 70s, Batman in the 80s and 90s, but it was still kind of like what was physically possible at
but
that point, and what could they physically shoot? And then with Spawn, yeah, I mean, hell looked like PlayStation 1 graphics, but they did a lot with practical effects and CGI, blended them a lot in that film.
and it was all fantastical. It was, I mean, true to the comic book itself, but none of the movies in 97 really hit both critically and with audiences.
So let's real quick. I mean to break you up, but let's look at this. So 78, we got Superman the movie,
Yep.
which kind of really set the tone. Period. Batman 66 really didn't set the tone too much, but 78 Superman, first mainstream, huge movie. And then we get some Captain America TV movies. Around that time, we also have Marvel going with the Incredible Hulk TV show, that Spider-Man TV show for a bit. And then in 80, we get Flash Gordon, arguably another sci-fi epic fantasy stuff. We get Superman 2 coming out. We get Swamp Thing, and we get Superman 3. And then we get to Red Sonja in 90 and 85, experimenting with some other comics. We get Howard the Duck. Good gosh, Howard the Duck. And we get Masters of the Universe, RoboCop. The late 80s, we're getting that change in tone to very much a little bit darker stuff. And then 89, we get Batman 89. We get The Punisher with Dolph Lundgren. We get Toxic Avenger movies, which are kind of, coming back now. We get kind of that darker tone. We get Dick Tracy, another kind of cop movie, RoboCop 2. We get Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1 with a darker tone. We get Rocketeer, which kind of a little bit in the middle of that. But we get Secret of the Ooze, which is very lighthearted stuff. Mask of the Phantasm in 93. We get Meteor Man, extremely underrated comic book movie. Love that
So
movie.
good.
So good.
So good, yes.
We get Blank Man in 94. We get The Crow, very dark. We get The Mask, which is based on a very dark movie. So things are going dark late 80s, maybe more so because of Batman 89.
But I
Uh,
got to ask one question.
yeah,
I think there's a distinction that needs to be made
give it.
between comic books and superheroes.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
look at the first Turtles movie and you look at the first Turtles comic, there's an alignment. in tone. You look at the Crow comic, you look at the Crow film, there's an alignment. And I would say that I think there's RoboCop's based on a comic, but it's not a superhero. And I think that's the big thing is
No,
like,
right.
what is superhero films looking at? Not just movies based on comics, because as we know, there's comics, there's graphic novels. Like, we were about to bring up here Tank Girl, random, but like
Random
the
95
comic.
movie. Yep. Judge Dredd,
So,
you know. So
and you look at the tones of the comics in those books, but they're not superheroes. And I think that's the biggest distinction is looking at what we look at as the superhero film compared
okay.
to the
I'm glad you said it that
anti-hero.
way. That's exactly the heart of what I want to talk about. Yes, I'm glad you said it that way. The difference between superhero and comic book movie. Yes. Yes. For real. Thank you, Tyler. Freaking see, that's why you are the nacho cheese Dorito with all the nacho cheese on it. That's you, bro. That's you, buddy. But yeah, like 96, you get some more Crow movies. You get The Phantom with Billy Zane, another underrated one. But then 97, Batman and Robin with that Men in Black, going back what Tyler said, and Spawn and Steel and Turbo Power Rangers movie when I stopped watching Power Rangers. And then 98, we get a movie. Anybody?
Blade.
Anybody? We get
Blade.
Blade.
Blade was that's what I'm saying. 97 represented this kind of death because you have the big companies with what's supposed to be the big ones all kind of fail and miss the mark. And then Blade's this very small, even though it's Marvel, but it's a success because they took it. Here's the key. They took it seriously because even Blade exists in a fantastical world. And I think that's the one that starts a ripple that it can, because it's also R rated and it's a serious comic book movie. It's got its fantastical points, but they tried to do something serious there.
Okay.
I'll admit, when I first
Yeah.
saw
I
Blade,
want to hear from
I
James.
didn't even know. Well, I didn't even know that Blade was a comic book movie until I found out after seeing it, and I thought it was a vampire movie, and I was like, "Oh, this is a sick ass vampire movie."
One of the sickest ever.
So yeah,
That opening scene is awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I went into it, I think, not knowing that it was a comic book movie, but I saw right away that it was a Marvel movie. And that struck a chord with me. I knew what Marvel was, in 1998 at 13 years old. And that was a turning point. I mean, heck, that movie saved comic book movies in a manner. Marvel itself was being sold off piece by piece. And when that movie made the money it did, it saved the brand. So that brand was actually falling apart at that point. I know they've talked about it how in danger Marvel was at that time. So I mean, just that it could be that profitable that the one film, the comic book film, could save. And I mean, in regards, nearly a superhero film. I mean, yeah, Vampire Hunter, but he's a comic book character. So yeah, it's an important film, I think, just in how serious a tone that a comic book film can have, like a superhero film could have.
I think I take it back that I didn't know 100%. It's because he was in the animated series of Spider-Man. So
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yes.
That's right.
I do that. So yeah, I was like, is this the same guy? Yeah. So
Yeah. Yep. That makes complete sense. Yeah. Like, I think we all knew we were just too young.
Yeah, I know I totally forgot that like Blade and Punisher were all part of that story with Morbius and the man spider and everything.
Yeah.
One of the best stories.
That was a great arc.
So James, when do you think superhero movies, comic book movies tone changed? Would you say Batman 89? Would you say Spawn? Would you say
Well, so they've changed they've changed a lot. So I think what we're getting at here is superhero movies have changed a lot in tone and what people accept as, what they should be. Should they be campy? Should they be taken seriously? Should they be fun and be fantastical and everything just exists in that world because it exists? When we get up to Christopher Nolan and Batman Begins in 2006, I mean, that's even post Superman Returns, which is very fantastical, which
Nope.
is
Superman
very.
Returns is before or after Batman Begins.
Oh, no, that was 2006. Yeah, no, Batman Begins was 2005. My bad. Sorry, got them backwards. But so in 2005, when Batman Begins, anyways, it does signal a sharp change in what they should, what people expect from maybe superhero films. This origin story, told from a certain perspective, explanations for things like they're a superhero, so they have their powers why, or their suit why, or their gadgets why. What does it do? What does it help them to do? Everything's got to be explained in a somewhat real world context, you know? And it has to have a reason for existing. Except in a comic book in a fantastical world with superheroes, these things exist and it's super science because they exist. Like, not trying to make a real scientific explanation as to how this could exist in the real world, but it exists because it's fiction, it's super science. And like, that's one of the things that I appreciate about the Batman over the Dark Knight trilogy is things just exist in that movie because they do. His glasses, his lenses that record everything, the way his gadgets and his armor are and the way they operate. And I can see that from the things that he did within the movie, it would prompt him to create new gadgets and they would just exist, instead of, randomly blowing up a fire extinguisher and having all this smoke go off. He created smoke bombs for diversions and stuff like that. You know what I mean? Evolution. They just exist. So I think that's kind of what we're trying to figure out here is like, what were superhero movies like before Nolan and what were they like after Nolan? Because after Nolan, shortly thereafter, we got the beginning of the MCU, which there's Iron Man. And Iron Man instead, though, lends itself extremely well to that scientific explanation as to how this guy created a tech suit.
Get
To
into
be
it, James.
so
Let's
it
wrap.
lends itself extremely well to that. I mean, what he did with Batman and making it a Bruce Wayne story for Batman Begins, for the entire trilogy, making it a Bruce Wayne story where there has to be an end. There is no end for Batman, particularly in comic books or in your perpetual second act as these episodic stories just continue to move forward. So, but with his idea, there had to be an end, and so with that being an end, I mean, age plays a factor, that type of stuff. That's why we get the time jump. That's why we get the arthritis or the damaged cartilage in the knees, and he can no longer do the things he once did as Batman. So he made a superhero movie a very personal story that somebody can take something extremely tragic like that and make it a strength and use it to do good in the world, whereas other people say like your Two-Face in this world has something bad happen to them and it's more of a weapon, more of an excuse to do more harmful things to people. So there's a lot to there's a lot to discuss because he did some great things with the characters, making superheroes characters that people want to see on film. But then also there's some things there that, it's a fantastical world and you got to run with, and everything can't have an explanation.
I think
or the perfect explanation,
I think one thing to look at real quick here is where certain things are going. 2000 we got X-Men. And as good as that movie is, they were like, the movie that's not on here that actually influenced it is The Matrix. 1999, The Matrix, the all black, that sleek look of just being, this very tone. So the X-Men comes out, they're like, okay, we're gonna put them in black leather. We're not gonna take it's too kiddie-ish, it's campy, it's jokey to put them in these, comic accurate suits. So we have this step right here of, all right, we want to do comic book superhero films, but we need to pull it into what works. So they try to ground X-Men, which it works. X-Men 1 is good, but then you watch it again, it's a little boring at
Agreed.
times too. It doesn't hold up as well as you think. So they continue that with X-Men 2. We won't get into X-Men 3 right now. And then you have certain ones that are hit and miss, okay? Like Ben Affleck's Daredevil. The director cuts better, and that's 2003. But once again, this is Daredevil's first film. It's not a known commodity. Spider-Man is the big one in 2002 that plays it very close to the comic. Green Goblin's suit's a little bit more tech-looking armor-based compared to, the comic. But they play it very close to being comic book accurate and real and show that this can work. I mean, the only, I think, fantastical, what I think is crazy is they did the organic web shooters compared to, the mechanical. But the thing is so that one is really a great example. And then, of course, 2004 Spider-Man 2. But then we get to 2005. And here's a list of superhero comic book movies that were released in 2005, just to give us an idea of the landscape. Adventures of Shark Boy and Lava Girl, Batman Begins, Constantine, because they didn't want to call it Hellblazer, because they didn't want to get confused with Hellboy and stuff like that. The Crow Wicked Prayer, which is a piece of shit. Elektra, Fantastic Four, A History of Violence, Sin City, Son of Mask, and V for Vendetta. Now, most of those are comic book graphic novel based, except, we have Fantastic Four is really early superhero movie other than Batman Begins. But the thing with Batman Begins is we have to look at where Batman ended. Our last Batman film didn't do well commercially or critically. It stepped back into the realm of campy, over the top, and it was, a giant toy commercial, and the property was put on pause. So this is the complete other end of that spectrum. And I think the thing with Batman Begins is it is a film first, with our protagonist happening to be a costumed hero. It doesn't approach it as a Batman film. It doesn't approach it as a superhero. It approaches it as a movie. If you take out the Batman element and just put him in, say, in a mask, like he's just wearing a ski mask, it's still a good movie. It dips into the philosophy and philosophical discussions of fear and why we do this. And it took everything serious. It didn't play it for laughs. It didn't tongue-in-cheek it. It took it serious of why someone would do this. And, the dialogue is great. I love the dialogue between Alfred and Bruce about symbols, about why Batman, it's a symbol. It's elemental. It's something that people can get behind. As a man, I am just this. And it took everything with a bit of reality, even that the reality is they took the time of where everything came from in his costume, why this is occurring. It took an origin story where it took its time. Every other origin is like a montage or something small, but this was Batman doesn't show up until a little over halfway into the movie. And it just made you look at, okay, what if Batman was in the real world? What if he was real? And I'm looking at Batman Begins because The Dark Knight takes it even more to another step of reality. And, Batman Begins came out and it was good. It was a hit, but it wasn't the phenomenon that what became of The Dark Knight. That was the pinnacle. Like
So, and Batman 89 and 92 with Batman and Batman Returns, Batman was gothic, it was noir, it had like a, the Burton verse, if you will. And then Schumacher comes in, brings in that 66 kind of camp, the neon lights. Starts becoming a toy commercial again. And then we get to 97 and it's like full blown toy commercial, as Chris O'Donnell will tell you. Like in interviews, he's like, I was like, I'm filming a toy commercial. And then,
Yes.
but we
What
had,
I just wanna say hold on. I just
um,
wanna add,
but we had
behind the
Batman.
scenes, Batman and Robin is crazy.
Yes. So, but we had Batman the Animated Series for all those years, and we got to see Robin, and we got to see that dynamics with all those villains and stuff. So, my question to you guys, and I want to go around here. What do you think the general audience thought Batman was supposed to be? Like before Batman Begins came out, what do you think the audience felt Batman was supposed to be? And what do you think Batman should be? Finch.
Well, this is the reason Batman's my favorite hero, and it's changed slightly a little bit over the years, but the reason I always liked Batman was because I always thought, which, I'm old now and fat and it wouldn't ever happen, but I always thought
Oh, you
that
chiseled, you
I
chiseled.
could I always thought I could be Batman if I had enough money. You know what I mean? Like that was like the dude has no powers, but he helps people, he fights crime. Like that was what led me to love Batman like growing up. Obviously, reading comics and seeing other things, other heroes are like Batman's still probably the best, but I actually feel like I relate more to like Superman in my philosophy and stuff like that. But I still love Batman, and he's still my favorite, and he always will be. There's no changing that. But for me, growing up, Batman was just a man who did what he could, who he lost his parents and decided to fight crime and protect the innocent, and that's what I think Batman is and is supposed to be. Obviously, some of the stories I like more about him are just like the stuff where it's like you actually see Batman like struggle with being good, but like always still somehow like finds a way to be good. And I don't know. That's what I always thought Batman was. So
James, what do you think like general audiences were feeling that Batman should be, and what do you think Batman should be? Well, I think Batman should be unmuted Mike
Yes, you
and
should. It should be unmuted. I think that the general audience, with where they had come off from Batman, that it had definitely left a sour taste in people's mouths. Some people might have been interested to see a new Batman movie after so many years coming out, but it lost a lot of people with how campy it was, with how much of a toy commercial it was, with how pretty much every bit of dialogue was some kind of quip and one-liner. So it just ended up being a bad movie, all in all. I mean, it spawned some great toys, but that was about it. So, I think when it was coming out, I think some people, if they enjoyed Batman as a general audience member from, we're talking about not comic book fans who are looking forward, they're like, "Oh, a new Batman movie's coming out." But somebody who sees a thing and they see a Batman movie and they're like, "Oh, well, I liked Michael Keaton," and they see the trailer for this movie or something, this movie's coming out. It's a bit darker. It looks a little more gritty, Batman looks cool. There's shadows, there's no neon, not a bit. So, I think it might have just gotten some people, I think it got some people wanting to see what appeared to be a new and a serious Batman again. And I think my personal opinion, he's a he's a dark character who had something very tragic, very traumatic happen to him, and he was able to, turn that trauma into something good to try and prevent that from happening to others. And I think, as as a character who experienced that amount of trauma, that he's had so many stories over the years addressing that, you know, that where he is now, I think is really awesome, that he's kind of finally a little bit more of a mature character, you know? I mean, when he came out, he was very dark, very violent to begin with, but then they automatically turned it around and brought in Robin to make it more kid friendly pretty early on. And I think he kind of had that going for him for quite some time, even with the noir and the gothic undertones. But he had that going on quite some time, and they had the Comics Code Authority, all that jazz before Frank Miller and stuff came out, and kind of gave that Batman had a serious thing happen to him. So what he does is very serious, and I think the tone reflects that. Like what I think Batman should be, I think we need a Batman who is a mix of what we've seen with like Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton, some of that really hyper stylized Batman action in his prime where, he has whatever bat shark repellent or whatever he needs just because the story calls for it. And I think that's what we need to see from, like, say, Batman the Brave and the Bold in the DCU, as opposed to Matt Reeves' The Batman Part 2.
Okay. So you want that more fantastical Batman, not that.
It's time. It's time. He's done some really great things on film when you see, like, the warehouse scene, or you see what they did with Michael Keaton's version in The Flash.
Mhm.
Some of the best stuff of the movie is the things that Batman could do. And that was a 70-year-old Batman. What does a Batman in his prime do?
So, Tyler, what do you think Batman should be?
Well, my first thing was what you asked when you talked about the cultural consciousness is like, I don't know how to comment on that because at the time in 97, like I'm 12 years old and like I'm enjoying Batman and Robin for what it is, and I didn't even realize till later how much people didn't like it because, you and your friends like it or whatever. I knew like my uncle didn't like it. He preferred Batman 89. And it was one of those things when we were teenagers, there were no Batman movies except for the animated stuff that was, so throughout high school, there's no really a whole lot of Batman talk as far as a new film or whatever. And then we get Batman Begins and it comes out. And I don't think people knew how to take the movie because I think people were so used to Batman being more fantastical. Even 89 has some camp in it now when you look at it. And Begins was so much more of a start from point zero and be rooted in reality and over explanation with certain things. But I think it kind of needed that to bring it back to something people could relate to. And I just remember like after watching Batman Begins, just kind of like I liked it, but I didn't love it. And the dude that I saw it with, he was like, but Batman's family was supposed to be killed by the Joker. He's like, but that's not what this was. And so you have to you can't take the general knowledge that we have as reading comics or watching things as what the cultural collective thinks, because they'll just look at the film and that's their story. That's their canon. That's what is.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
so
Exactly.
I don't even know like what people were wanting because like I said, Batman Begins wasn't a huge massive hit. It was a success, but it wasn't I didn't feel it. I mean, we didn't even have the internet and social media to any form really. Facebook had just kind of started. I had my Facebook in 2004. So we weren't really able to gauge except if it was the people you were around. But as far as what I want out of Batman now, I
We're not
love
there yet.
the
No. No,
okay.
just
Well, I mean that's what you asked. That's what you asked is what I think Batman should be.
well,
And
yeah,
that's what
okay.
everybody talked about.
Sure,
So
go ahead, darling.
I'm just saying, like, I think finding that balance is the key. I think The Batman is great for what it is, as being this very, I mean, it's dark and gritty in a different way than Nolan's is, but at the same time, it's not over explaining everything. You just kind of go with, okay, so Batman got these lenses. Maybe he got it from his company, maybe he created them himself. You know, Batman Begins was like, okay, he's got a bat suit. It's an armor from Wayne that's not being used. He got the Batmobile. It's something from Wayne Enterprises that's not being used. The Batman's kind of this, looks like he pieced his suit together from different things. I don't want whatever happens with the new Batman to come off being campy. I don't want it to be silly. It needs to have some stroke of reality, but there can be a little bit more of a, I don't know, fantastical side to it. You know, when people say, oh, it's not comic accurate, but what comics are you pulling from? Because when Nolan looked at comics, they looked at things like The Long Halloween, which is more serious. It's taking the material serious and placing it in a reality. It's not as fantastical. So it just depends on where you're going with what comics you're pulling from. So for me, I just want a Batman that's going to feel like he's not, Bat God. And that was one thing that Nolan did, was he made sure that he wasn't Bat God. He relied on other people, Alfred, Lucius, to be able to succeed. So there you go.
Okay. So I want you to think too, did Batman need the serious reset after Schumacher's Batman and Robin? So quick answer. Just quick answer.
Yes.
Going around. Did he need the reset after Batman and Robin? Tyler.
Yes.
James.
Yeah, I think so.
Finch.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because, in my personal opinion, I think what Batman and Robin, why it failed so much is because it was a toy commercial. That's not what people wanted. People wanted more along the lines of Batman Forever, just that nice mixture. Batman Forever had so much dark tone to it that they didn't even really get on. And also, up until Batman Begins, we never had a full blown origin story for Batman. He just existed. So with Nolan coming in here and grounding it in realism, no supernatural elements, influenced by Year One, like Long Halloween, a little bit of Nightfall in there, focusing on fear, escalation, corruption, morality. And I think Tyler just hit on this a good bit. What he said, like if you take the Batman element out of Batman Begins, it's still a really darn good movie. It's this movie about a rich guy that just wants to clean up the streets and make his city better. You don't even have to put the Batman element in there, So does Nolan's realism in Batman Begins and the Dark Knight trilogy, does it make Batman more relatable? Does it make Batman more mythic? Does Christian Bale even capture Bruce Wayne and Batman? Or do the villains overshadow? Okay, that's a real good question there. Do the villains just completely overshadow Batman, and that's what we really love? Or do we like this realistic Batman? Or do we just like how the villains were interpreted? So what really
I
sold it? Go ahead, Finch.
I think in Batman Begins, it was a Bruce Wayne story. It was a Batman origin story, and it was great. The realism. That's you and I saw this movie together. You, me, and Dennison, right? We saw
Yeah,
Batman
I think
Begins in
so.
the
Because
theater.
it was right after we graduated, it came out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
Oh,
remember
those were
leaving
good
that
times.
theater. We were giddy. We were like, "Dude, this is Batman. This is Batman." Like, yeah, and
All hyped up on Mountain Dew and Cece's Pizza.
oh yeah, yeah.
Oh,
Oh
those
man,
are
I
good
miss
times.
CC's. Oh, and Kings. We go to Kings, and
Yeah.
yeah. Sorry. Yeah, no, the realism. I remember, for me, it was I love how they went into it. It was like, oh, everything he had was tactical, man, and then obviously we got a villain who we've never seen on screen before, Ra's al Ghul, played by
the
the great
Scarecrow.
Liam Neeson. Oh yeah, and Scarecrow, played by Liam Neeson and Cillian Murphy. And I remember seeing that movie, and I was just like, "That's Batman." You know what I mean? Like that's that's Batman. Like it was a hard reset. Like I want to say like overcorrected, and they did, but it was great for what it was at the time. And then obviously, like you go in, you ask about the villains. Like I would say in Batman Begins, that was a Bruce Wayne Batman origin story. So the villains that were in there were great, but they weren't overshadowing in that movie, except Liam, because Liam just steals the show, man. But that's Liam Neeson in general. Excuse me. But obviously in the later iterations of like the Dark Knight and Dark Knight Rises, yes, the villains kind of steal the show.
Hands down.
Obviously,
Absolutely.
Joker in Dark Knight, Two-Face gets like half the movie himself. We get some Scarecrow in there, and then in Dark Knight Rises, I feel like half that movie, Batman's not there. It's Bane's movie.
Yep.
Yeah. The only great thing that I really loved about The Dark Knight Rises was it was filmed in Pittsburgh. So, and we get the Steelers, Heinz Ward running, when they blow up the stadium. So,
Yeah.
but yeah.
What are you thinking, James? Do you think?
So yeah, I mean, I do think that the villains definitely carry the trilogy. I mean, Christian Bale does a great job playing Bruce Wayne and playing Batman. I mean, maybe he should have stopped smoking in between each movie, making that voice more. Yeah, by the third movie, I'm surprised Bane wasn't like, "What?"
Well, Bane's voice wasn't any better. Yeah.
They had to fix Bane's voice.
Yeah.
You guys remember the original trailer?
Yeah.
You were born in a Waffle House. Owned it by us. You were smoking cigarettes since you were 14.
I mean, heck, now just looking back, the cast in the first one, people watching it now, I think the first go around, you were like, everybody did a great job. Everybody was a really cool villain. The way they did things was kind of cool. For Batman, it was really grounded. You were like, yeah, that like wonder what kind of villains you would ultimately be able to see. But that's the thing. I don't think, that Batman's going up against anybody like Killer Croc. That Batman's not going up against anybody like Mr. Freeze, like Clayface. He's not going to go up against anybody like that. And that's fine, especially the way that they portrayed the character, but it's the difference in having a self-contained story and then, trying to develop something for what would be episodic storytelling.
So Tyler, okay. So basically what I'm saying is, okay, do you feel that the villains overshadowed Batman? Do you feel that Batman Begins, Dark Knight trilogy, do you feel it made Batman more relatable? Do you feel it made him less mythic? Like, yeah.
I feel it the first movie was his story. It was Batman, it was Bruce Wayne. The villains were there to service the story. The second chapter is the villains take more front because they're the changing element that caused him to grow and change. He's already stable, so like the changing factor is the villains with each film. I think it made him relatable, and I think it was a much needed change for just the character and the genre of a superhero period, that they can be taken seriously and exist in a quote unquote real world. I think, like James said, that you couldn't continue this. This Batman was not designed or created to be continual. He's not going to continue fighting or being Batman forever. No pun intended there. But you couldn't use every villain, because then it would go ridiculously crazy trying to make what Mr. Freeze would look like if it was a Christopher Nolan styled Mr. Freeze. That's why the villains that were very carefully chosen. I mean, even the Joker, being that the makeup is like war paint, then being the bleached skin was, and the scars for the smile, everything had to have some sort of realistic reason. And that's great, but that can only go on for so long with certain characters. I think what the Nolan did with Batman was great, but it's not the status quo. It is a version of Batman. It is not the top tier Batman. It's not the Batman that exists for everybody. It's not the one that they should be held up as like the greatest Batman ever. It is a version of a character.
Right. I feel in that regard that the Nolan trilogy will go down as some of the best, one of the best Batman trilogies, some of the best made Batman films. But is it going to be the best Batman or most people's favorite Batman because he's not actually like a comic book version?
Yeah, so I'm gonna hit a bunch of points in rapid fire because of time here, okay? So so the case that Nolan kind of ruined Batman. Some points I wrote down here. The Dark Knight trilogy is too realistic. You throw away the gothic, the fantastical elements of Batman, and you put it you kind of put in for lack of better terms, you kind of put it in a hole. You kind of put it in a box. And because you can't do Clayface, you can't do Poison Ivy, you can't do Mr. Freeze, you gotta take out the Lazarus Pit portion of Ra's al Ghul. You can't you can't add any fantastical side to this Batman. This Batman can't work with Justice League Dark. He can't meet Swamp Thing. He can't really meet Constantine. He he can't work with kaijus or trying to take down dark side stuff. You put this whole world of Batman DC Comics, you got to go and make it tunnel vision because this is all we can do because we're going the realistic version of Batman. And 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 Batman Begins, like some of you guys said, like he's not overshadowed by his villains in the first movie. Like not really at all. But when you do Heath Ledger's Joker, the arguably the greatest villain of all time, just being the Joker, but Heath Ledger is just acting in that. It overshadows anything Bale did in Begins. Because in Begins, his suit was better, in my opinion, but he couldn't turn his head. And his voice, like nobody was making fun of his voice until Dark Knight came around. And he's like, and because of Heath Ledger overshadowing, Christian Bale in that movie, that's where Batman starts becoming like a comedy. That's where Batman starts getting made fun of again because of how Heath Ledger was so good in that movie. It made Bale look bad, and that's why and because of the rise of the internet, we got memes and jokes about that constantly. Excuse me. And then with with the Dark Knight Rises, we got so many things that just didn't make sense. Like how Batman just shows up and comes out of a hole and he's in the middle of nowhere and he has no money and he just shows up in Gotham. And then you get Hardy's performance and it being a Bane movie, like Finch said there. We get the Batman voice becoming a meme. It damages his credibility. Everything that we did in Batman Begins kind of gets damaged by the Dark Knight and Ledger, and just my personal opinion. And then because it made so much money, like looking at box office mojo here, the Dark Knight made about half $1 billion and it made 533,345,358. The Dark Knight Rises made 448 mil, and the Batman with Pattinson made 369 mil. These movies made so much money, but was it really Christian Bale's Batman that was making that money, or was it the Joker? Because everybody likes the Joker.
It was
Um,
the Joker.
it was the Joker for real. And an argument for Nolan ruining superhero movies and comic book movies is because of the money that The Dark Knight made. When you came in with Superman Returns and it was just somewhat lighter, it didn't do so well. And, well, they were trying to capture that old Christopher Reeve magic somewhat, and it just wasn't gonna we didn't really give it a chance, to be honest, but when you get Man of Steel and you try to you now create this idea that, "Oh, we gotta make everything dark and realistic because that's what's making money now, and that's the tone." And then you get the release of, like, Kick-Ass, and you get, like, all these and James Gunn's Super, which never gets talked about, but you get these realistic tone of superhero movies, and, you get Winter Soldier, which worked. It can work for this, but you start getting these filmmakers thinking that this darker tone and realistic tone can work for everybody. And it can't. It can't work with Superman. It can't. Like, and we can debate this all day, but like that's probably a big portion of why the DCU kind of failed is because Superman can't be taken this realistic dark way. Right? Am I right, Krypton Port?
I mean, yeah, I mean,
Well,
it
Go
can't,
ahead.
let's say dark, it can be taken real, but dark isn't the way to go, and that I think that's the line. And I think dark only works for certain superheroes. I mean, even Arrow, the first season of Arrow was heavily influenced by the Nolanization of Batman into Green Arrow.
Yeah.
Sure is.
The
For real.
the f- and I think the Dark Knight, and because even the Dark Knight went even more serious they just filmed in Chicago. They didn't even try to hide it anymore. Everything was on location except the cave. The Narrows in Batman Begin gave it a different feel that still felt comic booky, but Dark Knight just felt like you were just shooting outside and just made it even more realistic, which is great, at that time, but it's not what we want constantly. And I think, my biggest negative I would say about what Nolan did was the status quo of Batman. People could not let go of what Batman is. So when you had BVS, which came relatively soon, 4 years after The Dark Knight Rises, you had people say Batman wouldn't do that. That's not Batman. Batman doesn't do. Well, yeah, it is Batman because you go read The Dark Knight Returns, go read some comics, but everyone had cemented Nolan as that's what Batman is. That's his history. That's their canon. That's because that's what they pulled, that it just left such a huge staple that nothing else changed. Like, that's why it goes back to how important movie versions of these characters are being true to the comic stories, because that's what everyone accepts as believed. We'll be doing an episode later this year where we're going to look at Superman live media and how it changes the story and how that then changes the character in comics and moves forward. What so yeah.
Hmm. I mean, like, so as a characterization, no, that characterization does not. It is not Superman. That's not how the character is, and that's not how the character is portrayed. You know, they give that idea to Henry's Superman and Man of Steel. He's not the only version that wandered the world not knowing who he is, helping people anonymously. It's not the first version to do that. So he just, yeah, he didn't know who he was. He himself was, yes, in a darker position there, but he was still Superman doing what he does, helping people, traveling the world, doing what he does. So he was not a dark character. He was just in a darker world, and he was just in a bit of a darker place because he's now how old, and he's still searching for his identity, you know? And that's just the way that story was crafted from Batman Begins, you know? I mean, how many people said Superman or Man of Steel is just Superman Begins?
Mhm.
So it was crafted directly off of it. David Goyer wrote that movie, you know, it was crafted right off from it. Nolan was a producer on that movie, had a big hand in starting it, getting it kicked off. So it was a very real world take of of this incredibly unimaginable being, but I still, Man of Steel is still my favorite movie, my favorite Superman solo film, and I think that it's not a betrayal of the character. It's not dark. I just think that it was influenced by that, and I think they did. I think they did a damn good job with Man of Steel in the same way that they did a damn good job with Batman Begins.
So how do you feel about the thought that Jonathan Kent in Jonathan Kent took a dog,
Okay.
named it Crypto, and this was a Zack Snyder idea that they were gonna do, that John Kent took this dog, named it Crypto, and then just euthanized the dog to teach Clark that, yeah, life's fragile.
Well, that didn't happen in the movie, so.
Oh, there's a gravestone. It's there. It was gonna be talked on later.
Oh, yeah?
Well,
Oh, yeah.
Well,
that, that,
I think that there's a lot of ideas that aren't on screen that people are really applying to the movies, you know?
I'm just saying
I know
that
he's had some controversial things that were said, but none of those things had actually made it onto the screen or are part of the story that we have. When it comes to the film, what we have is Jonathan Kent practicing what he preaches in believing that the world was not ready for his son and that his son was not ready for the world to know who he was. So that he sacrificed himself much in the same way that Henry or that Superman sacrificed himself in the end of the next movie to prove that he was willing to practice what he preached, that even if the people of Earth didn't accept him, he was willing to die for them.
it's that whole
Same
darkness that
way his
Nolan started.
father was
Nolan started the
willing to
darkness.
die.
and the darkness can work for Batman because it's built into the character, but you can't apply the same template to every character. And I
No.
think but I mean, also let's look at the fact the Nolan trilogy period set a template of how to do trilogies. Like they followed a very strong pattern. And like I said earlier, is they approached it as a film first, and then it just happened to be a Batman movie. So
I want to throw this at you guys. I think that because Batman and Nolan made things so dark and so realistic, that's why the MCU succeeded. Because when Iron Man came out, like RDJ and people in that movie looked like they were having fun. Like you watch these Nolan movies, and then you see, and you go into, the start of the DCU. No one really looks like they're having fun. We're not going to have a fun movie here. Like, but you go into Iron Man, and like we're having some fun here. We're drinking a little bit. We're building robots. We're 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 building this out of a box of scraps in a cave. Like,
I mean, yeah, but it's like, but you don't. I mean, you don't get Iron Man without there being the idea that you can do things realistically. And they took that realistic for Iron Man and was like, okay, we can do it realistically, but we can make it a little bit more comic book.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's what it
why
was. I
it's
mean,
such a good
Yeah,
balance.
what they did, you're not building this massive machine with all of these moving components in a cave out of scraps, also creating a power source from next to nothing, It's just the small bits of this element that are inside of his missiles. You know what I mean? That's all it takes. And it's that super science, and that's the thing where I think that they moved over when the MCU started coming out was this is a comic book, but we're starting with this one that's kind of got this super science element. Yes, we're going to say that this arc reactor is this, but that's it. That's what
Yeah.
the arc reactor is. The arc reactor. That's it. It's not like the
Because it
science
brought
behind
back
it.
that
They
comic
made it
book.
for this, blah blah blah.
Brought
It's
back the
from the
comic book.
comic. Exactly. They brought the
Yep.
comic book to the real, and they blended them really well. And I mean,
Where the Nolan
Superman
movies were the
20
superhero movies,
yeah.
Marvel was bringing back the comic book. Yes. Real.
Superman 2025. I mean, that's like a comic book on screen, right? It's like
Beautiful.
watching a comic book on screen. It's got an opening crawl like you're reading an exposition box on the first page, and then you flip the page and you get into the story with the dialogue and the panels and everything.
I mean, that goes
Um,
back to, do
so
you want a comic book on film or do you want a film of a comic book? And I think Batman
Yeah.
Begins is a film of a comic book character, while Superman is a comic book on film.
Yeah, I think these comic book IPs want their comic books on film, and I think, you know what I mean? And I think as fans, that's what part of what everybody's been wanting to see all the time. But
Correct.
the problem is going to be what comic books they're going to put on screen, because there are going to be people who are like, well, I wanted this comic book on screen, so this
Mhm.
one sucks, blah 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 blah. You're never gonna make them happy. I gotta leave. I'll talk to you guys later.
Peace. And that
Peace.
gets and that is getting to the final point of the argument, is the final the final nail in the Nolan coffin, whatever. So if Batman is supposed to be a mix of detective, gothic superhero, and a symbol, did Nolan capture that enough in his movie, or did he just warp it into what he felt Batman should be? Did he really give us what Batman should be, or did he just give us what he felt Batman should be?
He gave us what he felt Batman should be, because he made him a detective, but he still couldn't do everything on his own.
Barely a detective.
He
Barely.
needed to work with people. He wasn't superhuman as far as like his skills and everything. He made him more of a normal guy with lots of money. And that was what he wanted to do. That was the goal of the story, the script, and everything, was to make it as realistic and as grounded as possible, so that it was a reinterpretation and vision of these characters.
I was
Finch,
gonna say he
give
didn't
me
he
them
didn't
thoughts.
he didn't really do the detective element as well as he could have.
He didn't do it at all.
Obviously, I mean, we got that though in the Batman, the Robert Pattinson, the
But
Batman,
did
where
we though? Did we?
he was a pretty good detective.
Let me
I
heat
mean,
it up. Okay. If he is such a good detective, and this is based on The Long Halloween, which is arguably the greatest Batman story, arguably. If he's a real detective and he picks up a carpet tucker, okay, and he doesn't ask anybody, hey, what this is, and he seriously doesn't know what it is, and he's supposed to be the greatest the greatest detective of all time. He doesn't know what the F that thing is. Is he really a good detective? And then he doesn't know this difference in the Spanish of La Rata or whatever. No, he's not the greatest detective. He wasn't a good
he's not
detective
the
in that
greatest
movie.
yet, but
He
he
wasn't a good
does
detective in that
detective
movie.
work.
I know I'm wearing the shirt, but he wasn't
But
a good
that's the thing.
detective in that movie. Sorry.
That's the thing.
Sorry.
Is
End Riz. End Riz.
in a movie, you can't make him. You got to make him a good detective, but you can't make him too great, because then he
Well,
has
then he shouldn't have
no.
found it. He shouldn't have found that tool.
But
But
I'm
he
just
needed to
saying.
find it.
I'm just saying, like, in the movies, they never call him the greatest detective and everything. Like, it's something he's working towards. That's why I liked in the Long Halloween film, the animated film, where he says there's the whole part of, I never knew how much detective work and stuff I would have to do, because it really starts to show
I did like
where
that line. Thanks for
where
bringing it up,
Batman
buddy. I
where
like that line.
Batman is. So I feel like in the Batman, he is a detective, but he's not there yet as the greatest. It's still a progress. I mean, it's only year 2, right? Yeah.
It's like
In
Mark,
the
great
Batman.
They got to give him something to achieve towards, to become the greatest detective.
so he can be the way Brian wants his Batman.
Even
Which-
then, he's not the greatest, because isn't Tim Drake a better detective than him? So, but we'll get to that.
I'm a better detective than that Batman.
But-
Tyler broke my heart. We did some episode, and Tyler was like, "Yeah, the greatest Batcave is in the Batman. The
It's
best
I picked that one's my favorite, because I like that cave.
Well, you're wrong. It's not the best. It's not the favorite.
It's
my
Batman.
Your
favorite.
favorite Batcave is 66.
Yep. There you go. 66.
That's
That
the
can be
answer.
Brian's favorite Batcave. That's fine.
Brian's just angry at everything.
Although I do like the Flash Batman's cave. That's pretty good too. because all the suits right there, and
Yeah, that's not bad. That's not bad. That's not bad. But the Batman,
I liked it. That's my favorite.
it's okay. You can have your opinion, even if it's wrong. So we get with Nolan, with Nolan creating this Batman world, it has created such a problem that I want to finish up this podcast with. It's
Okay.
created such a problem now for Batman in movies and Batman in cinema because if you haven't noticed since the Dark Knight trilogy came out, when Batman goes campy, it's like with the Brave and the Bold cartoon or anything, people don't know how to respond. Like
Mhm.
because now this Batman has to be this certain way. And now we've created the reverse and we made it separate to the DCU as far as we know. Now people expect a Batman so serious and grounded. And Matt Reeves' Batman is gonna go into the same exact it's almost like Bat Reeves is, Bat Reeves. Bat Reeves' Batman is gonna have to fill in all those gaps of Nolan's universe that we wanted and we never got. Like, we didn't get him to be much of a detective. We didn't get him to face, the Penguin. We didn't get him to face, like, all these other ones. It's like a continuation of that story. It's like the Nolan Batman where you don't have that ending. And and as these Batman movies have been made, it gets darker and darker where you can't see what the heck's going on. And
yeah,
and in the Batman, it's darker. Everything is darker. It's so much darker. And so in my opinion, like I mean, he made Batman respected again.
Yes.
And he made Batman the definitive DC Comics seller for sure.
yeah.
Without a doubt. I mean, I wasn't able to look up comic sales before The Dark Knight, but Batman was a seller for sure, but I don't think he was the top seller. I mean, in '90s, I would say Superman probably ruled it with Death of Superman in the Triangle era. I would say so, probably.
Yeah.
But when this came out, Batman skyrocketed sales. Like, some even argue that DC can't survive without Batman comics, because of the Joker and all this other stuff. And maybe that's true, but I think things are changing. And things are changing the way I want them to change. With 2025 Superman is done correct. Superman is hope. Superman is fun. People are having fun in that movie. It's lighter. It's the right tone. But now you have to bring Batman into this world, and you still have Bat Reeves, very dark Batman sitting over to the side here. So, first question: do you want Matt Reeves' Batman in the DCU? Tyler,
No. No.
Finch,
No, definitely no.
me, definitely not. Not one bit whatsoever. And I I think you continue that Matt Reeves let Matt Reeves have his trilogy. Let him have
Yep.
a trilogy. The next villain, a lot of people are saying that like we're gonna get maybe Mr. Freeze, but I don't think Mr. Freeze will be done justice in that world. I don't think they can do it because they've already we've already established this is more realistic, and I don't think that they're gonna do anything fantastical in that world at all. I think that the next villain's probably gonna be something grounded. It might even be Hush, and you can't even do Hush without all these other villains, in my opinion.
Hush would
But
be
I
horrible. Hush would be horrible 'cause the whole thing about Hush is the mystery,
right.
and
Would
once
you
you know
think
the
they're gonna bring in Court of Owls this next, or you think that they're gonna wait for the Court of Owls in the 3rd movie?
I
Or
don't
and
know.
when are they
What
gonna
I
do Joker?
Well, didn't they end the Penguin show kind of teasing that a little bit? So
They sure
I
did,
just want
because when he
I
was in
want
that
them
courtroom. Say
I
again,
want
Tyler?
the court. I want the court.
We
You know what
need
I'm
the
saying?
court.
I think
the court,
that is a very grounded villain base, and I agree with you, Brian. Like, I want Matt Reeves' Batman to be kind of this darker, more grittier detective noir style, and then the Brave and the Bold to be this more family accessible comic book.
That's what we need. That's what we need.
But still gothic and has all those elements, but it's not as gritty and dark and serious. Like I want the two. I want the two.
Do you guys feel that we need two separate Batman for the end of time now? That we
Not for
need
the
to
end, not for the end of time, but I think right now where we're at with already having the Batman and where it's at, and then what they're trying to do with DC Universe, yes. As much as I'd like to see Pattinson and Cornsweet interact, I think they would do well. But as building a whole universe, no, the Batman needs to stay its own thing.
Yeah, I think let the DCU establish itself and keep going. Let us get a Batman who's obviously going to have to be older because now he has the Bat family, and Pattinson's not that age. I don't want to see him time jump or anything. Like, just continue from where we left off. You time jump maybe a year or something. Keep it going. I think keep it grounded, because I do like the grounded elements and aspects of it. It's like you said, Brian, it's what Nolan was trying, but it's the part where Nolan kind of failed. Like, Nolan's was
Yeah,
great for what it
thank you.
was, but it's
Yeah.
the part where it failed because it's like it was explained, but maybe someone, I think Tyler might have said it, like somebody he over explained it, And in this one, it's like you don't have to over explain it. You just drop us in there. I mean, it's like we're not
Yeah, that's
getting a
what
Batman
James was
origin
saying.
story.
It just
Yeah, we're
exists. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're dropped in 2 years into him already being Batman, and we've got, like, Alfred's got a mystery behind him. This Batman works well with the police and things like that. So keep Pattinson's where it's on the route that it's going. I would like to see some different type of villains. Like, I would like a Killer Croc that I think could work in this as, like, a weird mutant. You know what I mean? Like, because we got a Killer Croc in the Suicide Squad that just looked like a weird bulked up freak man.
God,
I mean, but you can make him a circus freak or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, he doesn't have to be, he just has to be a little bit bigger than Batman and with like some sharp teeth and some scales. That can be some weird mutated thing that happened or whatever. Or give us, I want to see the puppet, the Scar, the ventriloquist.
ventriloquist.
Yeah,
I really
yeah.
want ventriloquist.
I want him.
Big time.
Obviously, I've been wanting Clayface for years, but we're gonna get that in a DCU.
Yeah, we are. Around my 40th birthday, baby.
Yeah, so I think keep it separate and yeah.
I think so. I think for the next Reeves movie, we're bringing in Robin. I say introduce. Well, it depends how many movies you want to do, but you should introduce Harvey Dent in this movie and start building that relationship. This movie should show more Bruce, make it a little bit more Bruce focused, and dealing with that. Bruce realizing he has to become that public figure, and he has to get his face out there. And adopting Dick Grayson is probably going to be a good part of that. But getting that relationship with Harvey Dent, and maybe thinking, if I'm going to be this symbol of hope, there's other things I can do with it. Kind of going into what that mayor was talking to him about in the Batman, like different things he can do. But if you bring in the court in the second movie, then do you finish it with the Joker in the third movie? Are you going
Third
to
movie is a full Arkham breakout.
or you can just do Nightfall? Kind of. You can do a proper full Nightfall. You going to bring Bane in this story, or are you going to what are you going to do? Like, because the and then you have the Riddler sitting in prison. I think you got to go with what Tyler is saying. I think I'm with Tyler on this. Like, the Joker is not the main villain of the third movie, but you do that full Arkham breakout. And heck, you can bring Hugo Strange into it and have Hugo Strange be your main villain and do a full Arkham breakout. And you do Arkham City, the movie.
Yes.
You can do that. Yeah. There you go. That's the answer. And the next movie, we'll just do Court of Owls.
And I mean,
maybe
wasn't the before this Batman movie came out, it was supposed to be Batflex. We get Deathstroke. Give us a Deathstroke. You know what I mean? Like, wasn't it supposed to be the Raid, but like Arkham Asylum
That's what Ben
as the
Affleck's
Raid?
is supposed to be. Yep.
Yeah, but wasn't that like what kind of Matt Reeves kind of took over? Like, give us that, man. That's what I'm waiting.
Supposedly.
But we're
Um,
gonna need more villains established before we get that. So
and that's what this next movie should definitely be doing. Like, give all these whatever. And then the third movie, you can make Harvey Dent be Two Face. You can get there, but we need a whole movie. And Tyler's been
Of
saying this
Harvey.
forever.
Yes.
We need a whole movie with him and Harvey. We really do. But it's yeah, it's interesting there. But ending on this, you know, Nolan has created the problem of that we need two different Batmans now because to give us our cake and eat it too. But in terms of the DCU, I really think that all they need to do is just take everything that Batman the Animated Series did and make it live action. That's all you need to do. And you can print money. You'll print money till the end of time. Like, make the villains just like in Batman the Animated Series, make the interactions with Superman just like Batman the Animated Series, get that Bat family going just like in Batman the Animated Series. But we can have we can explore his relationship more with, Damian. So we just take that Batman the Animated Series world and then we just drop Damian in it after Tim Drake. That's just what I feel.
Word.
So, do I think that Nolan ruined Batman? I think that Nolan ruined the fantastical side of Batman. I think that it made the general public have to think that Batman has to be grounded and serious all the time. I think it took away kind of some cool things of Batman in terms of his, kind of like fighting supernatural things and monsters. It took away a side of Batman that I thought was really cool and made him just more serious. And my question is, why so serious? Like, I think we need that fantastical Batman back that's more like Batman the Animated Series. I don't think he completely ruined him. I think he killed off a side of Batman that was fun. And that's my final word on it. Tyler.
I disagree with you. I don't think he ruined it. I just think it was a necessary change to reunite the interest in the character. But everything you do has consequences and legacy. So he didn't ruin it, but the fact that people can't adapt to that there are different versions of the character is what has not ruined it, but that's what's been the hurdle. I think now there's been enough time between the Nolan series and whatever we do next that it'll be accepted and embraced. I mean, the Batman was accepted and embraced. And if you look at just 2012 to 20, it's 10 years to, 2022. So it worked out well that way. So
Finchy Poo.
I'm still somewhat conflicted, but I kind of agree with you, Brian.
Tell me your
Um,
conflicts, my friend.
well, no, I mean, I still don't know because I still love the Nolan trilogy, no matter what. Like, Begins was great, Dark
Sure
Knight was
was.
good,
Yep.
was great. Rises, I don't love, but I don't hate it. But yeah, I mean, I agree with you. Like, he ruined the fantastical element to where it's like you can never
The
see
comic
him.
book side.
Yeah, I mean, you could never see him teaming up with anyone from the Justice League, except maybe Green Arrow, who
Yep.
has no powers. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Even though I think at the time when that came out, we were getting teased with the World's Finest. Everybody was we
That's
were
just
getting teased with that.
that's what I wanted.
Well, yeah, obviously, but it wouldn't have worked. But yeah, I think that's really the only part he ruined because, like I said, when you and I saw that movie in the theater, we left that theater thinking, "This is Batman. This is freaking awesome. Like,
Yep.
give us more of this." And
Exactly.
that's what we got. But I am looking forward to the DCU and the comic book element. And like I said, if we could preserve something, I like Justice League because I like Batman interacting with other metas and superheroes and, being just a man amongst gods and, you know, other heroes. Like, I like that. And that's what I
Same.
look forward to seeing.
Well, that is our thoughts on if Nolan ruined Batman. The general consensus is that he ruined parts of Batman, but not
Hmm.
all of it. I've been your host with the most, Brian Peters, and I hope this episode thrilled you. I hope it's made you think of Batman. But if anything else, I hope it left you gravely amused.